The location of my great-grandfather William Warrington Dakin's grave was a big mystery all the time I was growing up. So when I started doing family research, I put finding his grave on my list. I registered as a researcher at the BC Archives, and I just happened to meet the head man for the archives, and he gave me his phone number and told me that if I needed anything in a hurry, just phone him. So one morning at 10 o'clock when they opened, I phoned his number and I asked him for the death certificate of William Warrington Dakin, died around 1927, and I gave him other family particulars like his wife's name and his daughter's name, etc. So about 10:30 that morning, I received an email with William Warrington Dakin's death certificate attached. At the bottom of the death certificate, it said that he was buried in Mountain View Cemetery, Vancouver. So I phoned Mountain View Cemetery in Vancouver at about 10 to 11 that morning, and I asked if they had William Warrington Dakin buried in a grave there. So she got on her files and she said, yes, he's here. And she gave me the area and the plot number. And I said, is it an unmarked grave? And she said, yes, it's unmarked. I said, well, I want to put a marker on that. And she said, you prove to us that you're a family member, and we'll give you the go-ahead. I said, I'm in Victoria. Do you have anybody that can make a grave marker here in Victoria? She said, yes, we deal with Mortimers. So I phoned Mortimers at about 11:30 that morning, and I, discussed it with him, and he said, no problem. So then I proved to Mountain View Cemetery that I was William Warrington Dakin's great-grandson, and they gave me the go-ahead to put the marker on, and I put the marker on. It took about 2 weeks to get the marker on, and there it is. End of story.
Just looking through this book here. Read what it says on the back. The writings of Sybil Elizabeth Levesque described the author's immigration to Canada as a child in 1909. Life at Vancouver and moving to a farm at Squamish where she met Amity, her future husband. In October 1918, the couple eloped to Prince Rupert, BC, only to be caught in a sudden outbreak of influenza pandemic sweeping through the town. That was that Spanish flu that we're talking about here. Sybil fell gravely ill and was not expected to survive. During her life in remote locations on the BC coast, Sybil wrote of the world around her, of people and places, of her faith and her travels. Amity and Sybil had 6 children. In the 1950s, tragedy struck in accidents that took 2 sons. Sybil was naturally gifted with a powerful singing voice of operatic quality. In her later years, Sybil wrote stories. Here is the first publication of a revised revision. So this story I'm going to tell is not about her. See, that's her there. And there's my granddad, Amity Levesque. Him and his brother, a couple brothers and other friends, they hopped on the rails and came across Canada to BC. My other grandfather was with them. They were just young. and they met in Squamish in 1916, I think. So, but this story is not going to be about them. It's going to be about my great grandparents. Now that's my grandmother's mother and father, and they lived in on the Isle of Man, and they came all the way to Canada. They took the boat to Halifax and rode the rail to Vancouver, and then they moved to Squamish. And so let's see, it was 1909 when they moved to Squamish, or to Vancouver at least. February 1909, they left Liverpool on a boat. And so anyway, it was a couple years ago when I asked my brother if he knew where Grandpa Dakin was buried. You know, Mom used to always talk, about Grandma Dakin and Grandpa Dakin. And, Grandma Dakin had lots of sayings about everything that happened. Grandma Dakin used to say, never throw rocks at those who live in a glass house shouldn't throw rocks. I didn't know what it meant, but, after a while I learned that what it meant was, don't tell somebody else what to do when you're just as bad. And apparently Grandma Dakin had a saying for everything, and that's all I ever heard. And Grandpa Dakin, she told me that he actually went blind in his old age, and I guess he had to go in a home because they left him in Vancouver when they moved up the coast on the float camps. And he had a sister too that was in Vancouver. And so Grandma Dakin, she was on the float camp and she did the cooking, and Grandma took care of the books and ordering groceries and whatnot, and Granddad ran the logging camp. But anyway, years ago I asked my brother if he knew where Grandpa Dakin was buried, and neither one of us did, so he looked it up. Grandma Dakin, we knew where she was buried. She was buried in Alert Bay. Grandpa Dakin died in 1927, I think it was, and Grandma Dakin died in 1945. So it's quite a span in between their deaths. So anyway, we had already been to Grandma Dakin's grave in Alert Bay, and in the meantime, Phil discovered where Grandpa Dakin's grave was, and it was in Vancouver. So there was no headstone. So Phil had a real nice headstone made up, and and I got some dirt from his grave. So my idea was to take the dirt from his grave and put it on her grave next time we went to Alert Bay. And then I'll take some dirt from her grave and put it on his grave. It's just a way of making a dome of love over top of our whole family. Who goes to visit their great-grandparents' grave? But I wanted to do something special, so this, to me, was something special. So this is a story about doing that. Oh, and there's my grandmother in 1909 when she was 9 years old. Grandma Dakin and my grandmother. And I knew my grandmother. She had a kind of an English accent. Maybe it was an accent from Isle of Man. I don't know. But I remember I threw something overboard on the float camp one time, and she yells at me, "Oi! Oi!" I don't know what the heck does oi mean. So I didn't know she was getting after me. Oi. And, she had a different accent. And my grandfather, Amity, he had a French accent. So it was, they were beautiful people. I loved knowing my grandparents. My grandfather on Dad's side, I never did get to know him, Fidel Laviolette. But I got stuck with his name, so my middle name is Fidel. And but my grandmother on that side, we call her Nanny. They years ago they got rid of their logging camp and built a little hotel at Echo Bay. So that's where Dad grew up, at Echo Bay. But anyway, I'll get back to this. You know, and you wonder where this book came from. Well, Grandma used to like writing stories. She'd send them into the Highballer magazine and other magazines. And so she wrote a whole bunch of little short stories, you know, that kind of come together in a way. So I was visiting my cousin, Terry Scott, at the time, and he says, I got something for you. And I went in the back room and comes out with all these stories that Grandma wrote. So I gave these stories to my brother, Phil, and he made them into a book. Did a pretty nice job. And you know, there's Grandma and Granddad on their 50th anniversary. Judy and I were there, but we didn't get in the picture for some reason. Maybe we were late coming there after the picture was over. So it's kind of neat having a book. And Granddad actually got medals for being one of the pioneers in BC. So that was pretty cool. And so anyway, here's the story. I filmed a little bit of stuff, you know, when we went to Grandma Dakin's grave and Grandpa Dakin's grave. So here's the little video about that. Okay, Kenyon, that's where Grandma Dakin came from. She lived there. And Warrington, that was Grandpa Dakin's middle name, so he has to have something to do with that. He had a bunch of relations, and his sisters lived over in Liverpool. And he was actually born over on the Isle of Man, which isn't very far away. And when they got married, that's where Grandma was born too. Okay, here I am collecting up some dirt off of Grandpa Dakin's grave. This stuff I'm gonna take to Alert Bay. Put it on Grandma Dakin's grave. It just seems like something I had to do. You know, it was just eating at me. And this is what I came up with, something to do like this. Get some dirt from each other's grave. They're buried so far apart. I'm going to take that to Alert Bay. Okay. So we hooked up the fifth wheel and headed north to the North Island. It's actually quite a nice drive. You know, from being from Courtenay, it's about the same distance to driving to Victoria. We even ran into a herd of elk crossing the road on our trip. They got the right of way, so we just wait for them to cross. They all have to take a look, see what we're doing. The one with the collar, she jumps over the yellow line. I guess she doesn't trust anything with humans anymore after being collared up. And here comes the bull. He always takes up the rear, just making sure his girls are in good shape, nothing following them. Looks both ways for danger. It's all good. See you later. Then we stopped. We got a campground spot in Kluksui, I think they pronounce it. Nice, real nice campsite, just past Port McNeill, a couple miles And there we are, all set up. Lots of interesting things. Those couple sailboats that came all the way from Port Hardy, I guess. The wind was in their favor. Well, I made a little video for YouTube about the Kluksui campsite and whatnot, so I'm just going to insert it right here. After a few days in the campsite at Kluksui, I got up before the sun this morning. What a beautiful day. Wow, it's awesome up here. Today's the day we're going to catch the ferry over to Alert Bay, have a look around, visit my great-grandmother's grave over there. I think it's going to be an awesome day. The geese are all gathering together to head south. They all got something to say about it too. Maybe they're just arguing. Some want to stay. I don't blame them. On the left, that's Malcolm Island. Sointula is right there, but you can't quite see it in this light. I'm putting this video together like this because I want you guys to think about Grandma Dakin's grave way out on one of those islands, all by herself. Hardly anybody goes and visits her. So this way you can visit her. This is Sunday. Sunday's the only day I have breakfast. Get my day going. Okay, now it's about 8 o'clock. Well, it's time to head to Port McNeill and catch the ferry over to Alert Bay. This ferry has got a triangle route. It goes to Sointula, Alert Bay, and Port McNeill. So it shuttles back and forth this way and that way just to connect everything together. They have a pretty nice view in Alert Bay. See all the cruise ships going by. And here's Renee, my brother Renee. We don't see each other very often. He lives on the North Island. And here's Alert Bay. It's quite a little place. This is where my brother Philip was actually born, in Alert Bay many years ago. Alert Bay's on an island called Cormorant Island. So I guess these are Cormorant Island crows. I actually spent time in Alert Bay when I was a kid, both in the hospital and hanging out with my dad when he was pilot there. Now, here we are at the Anglican graveyard. And there's Grandma Dakin's death certificate. She died in 1945.
Okay.
And the camp was at Call Creek, it says on here.
Now.
And now the girls put flowers on the grave.
all my love's in vain. All my love's in vain. You may be high, you may be low. You may be rich, child, you may be poor. But when the load gets heavy, you gotta move.
But she was actually married, and she lived in this little town in England, and she had a baby girl. She had a girl, little girl. And one day there's a knock on the door, and it's the police. And the police says, "Is this guy your husband?" "Yeah." "Well, guess what? He's married to this other woman in this other town, and they got a family. So he's a bigamist." So
You're not really married.
when he came home, Grandma Dakin says, "What's going on? You got a family in the other town?" He goes out in the back.
Which town are you talking about here?
Yeah. So he goes out behind the house and shoots himself. He felt so bad. So then Grandma Dakin left, went to Liverpool.
This is her first husband. This
This is her first husband.
This
So
is-
anyway, that's the end of him.
she wasn't even a Dakin yet.
So then her and my mom's aunt, our aunt too, Aunt Margaret, right? They moved to Liverpool, and that's where she met Grandpa Dakin. And they moved from, Grandpa Dakin was from the Isle of Man. He was born and raised on the Isle of Man. So they moved over to the Isle of Man, got married, and had one more
Even though
kid.
she was away.
She had one more kid, which was our grandmother, Sybil Levesque. Now, that's what I know about Grandma Dakin up to that point. So Grandpa Dakin, he was a sailboat captain with the sword and everything, you know.
Oh, really?
And he'd
I
sail
remember
around the
seeing that
world,
sword.
and he sailed into Vancouver a couple times, and he really liked it. Now, the government of Canada built a railroad across Canada. Oh, you can get here real easy now. You don't have to go around the Horn.
Yeah, right.
Let's move to Vancouver. So
The
they
lady
sold
like
everything.
even.
And, you know, he's married, he got 5 boys. They moved to Vancouver. But after a little while, a couple months, his wife jumps on the plane or on the train with the 5 boys and says, "I'm out of here." And he says, "Where are you going?" She says, "I'm
This
not
is
living."
Sarah.
Yeah.
She's
No, not Sarah. Grandpa Dakin's first wife
Oh, okay.
with the 5 boys.
But
She
now,
says, "I'm not living anywhere where there's bears and wild Indians."
where does Sybil come in this? With the
Well-
5 boys.
Well, this isn't happening yet. This is before she met Sarah. He met Sarah.
He had
This is
5
what
boys.
I know about Grandpa Dakin.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm not living anywhere where there's bears and wild Indians. She gets on the train and she heads home to England. So he sticks around, sells the hotel, because that's what they bought, a little hotel, and so he sells it, and he gets on the train, goes home to England. She drops dead. So they farmed out the 5 boys, and that's when Grandpa Dakin met Sarah.
Back in the
In
Isle of
England.
Man.
Back
Or
in England, yeah. So they moved to the Isle of Man, and that's where our grandmother was born. About her age, and let's move to Vancouver. So they get on the boat to Halifax, on the train, and Grandma writes about it in
Right,
that
I
book.
remember reading that.
And they took the train, they moved to Vancouver, and then they stayed there until, I guess, Aunt Margaret was about 16. She got a job in an apartment building, or in a, what do they call them,
Brothel?
No. What do they call those big stores?
Department store?
Apartment stores. She gets a job there and a boyfriend. Well, let's move to Squamish, buy a farm. I'm not moving to Squamish, so Aunt Margaret stayed in Vancouver. But
City girls.
our grandmother,
15
Sybil,
houses.
they moved to Squamish, bought a farm. So our grandmother gets a horse. And she's riding all over the place. She was the girl on the horse.
A white woman on the horse.
And she'd go to dances. And she would see the train go by with Granddad on it. And they'd meet
Strictly logging train.
Oh yeah. Then they would meet at the dance. And they would go dancing and everything, and they fell in love and got married.
Oh, Mitty was on the train logging.
They went to Prince Rupert and got married. Eloped.
Wow.
But anyway, that's as far as I know. So, anyway, Phil
Well, that's
finds
some of the stories I'd like to hear from
Grandpa Dakin's grave. We've got a gravestone there. And I got dirt from that grave right here in this box from Grandpa Dakin's grave. So we're going to put this dirt from Grandpa
North
Dakin's
America.
grave on Grandma Dakin's grave. Does that sound like a good idea?
That's
Okay.
sweet. Great, great, great.
Okay.
Great, great.
And then,
Yeah.
then you know what we're going to do? We're going to put dirt from Grandma Dakin's grave, and I'm going to put it back on Grandpa Dakin's grave in Vancouver, because we're going over there in a couple of weeks. I can't get this thing open.
Is there a knife on that thing?
Oh yeah, better use the knife. Don't leave home without it.
Don't cut yourself.
Famous last
You know what?
Bust this thing out. Nothing. Over.
Yeah.
How are you going to take the dirt back?
Well, we won't take as much. Okay. So everybody take a handful of dirt. Don't put it right on the cement. Just put it along the side. Okay? Put it along the side.
Isn't your is he buried or is he cremated?
No, he's buried there in
Okay.
Vancouver. So, yes.
Good job.
Yes, this dirt is from Grandpa Dakin's grave in Vancouver.
Good job, girls.
Everybody has to put a scoop in.
Well, I think I would. You have to be right there. I think your heart would be right about there.
Your heart is right about there. Okay.
All right, no, I'll get some.
Million years it seems have gone by since we shared our dreams, but I'll hold you again. There'll be no blue memories then, where the skies are gray or blue. Any place on earth will do.
Well, I just thought of something else that Mom told me, you know, just after the Depression, they lived in a little cove off of Kinkham Inlet called the Belle Isle Sound, and Grandma and Grandad Dakin, they came up for Christmas, and so the only thing they had, they went out and caught some herring for Christmas dinner.
Evening shadows make me blue when each weary day is through. How I long to be with you, my happiness. Every day I reminisce
Well, after the trip to Alert Bay, we all met at the campsite for a hot dog roast. And so that was a lot of fun.
All my love's in vain. All my love's in vain.
Well, that weekend we also delivered some memorabilia from our dad's time in the military, as he's had the Distinguished Flying Cross and all these medals. Well, we had a great time on the North Island, but now it's time to head home. Look at that. Our trip from Courtenay to Port McNeill and back was 569 kilometers. Okay, now here we are getting on the ferry. We're heading over from Vancouver Island to North America, to the mainland, Mount Baker. I guess that's New Westminster. There's Port Mann Bridge.
Grandma Dakin is joining Grandpa Dakin.
That's some dirt from Grandma Dakin's grave in Alert Bay. Plus a rock from Cormorant Island. Well, there you go. Now you guys are together again. He was born, see, 1849. That's 100 years before I was born.
There's one thing that Grandma Dakin used to say that I want you all to remember, and that's two wrongs don't make a right.